Hi, my name is Mike Lingle, and today we're going to talk about pitch decks. And I've been looking at a few different pitch decks this morning, and I've pulled some examples of stuff that's great and stuff that could easily be improved. So let's dive right in. First of all, I think it's important with pitch decks, not only should you be out raising money, but you should also be working on getting traction and proving that what you say in the pitch deck is actually going to happen and that you're going to be able to make it happen. You know, a lot of investors see entrepreneurs come in and say, hey, I'm going to do this. And it's much more compelling to have someone come in and say, hey, I am doing this. So what can you be doing to prove that what you're saying in the pitch deck is true? And so the examples I've pulled from the pitch decks today, we're going to talk about the competitive landscape, financials, market size, the marketing plan, unit economics, and the marketing funnel. And if you don't know what these are, don't worry. I'm going to take you through it. So first, this was a sentence that jumped out to me in one of the pitch decks about the competition. Barriers to entry are small to non-existent. Our company with its first mover advantage can become one of the industry leaders. And there's two things that make me nervous about this. One is I think there's a misunderstanding of what a barrier to entry is. You actually want barriers to entry. You want to create barriers to entry so that other people, competitors, can't follow you. So you actually want to be creating giant barriers to entry. And the second thing is first mover advantage is not a competitive advantage. Just ask Snapchat, which is now being cloned by, the features are being copied by Facebook and Instagram. First movers or any company that's been crushed by Apple or Microsoft or big companies that come into a market late. There's actually some great blog posts on a blog called A Smart Bear, where he talks about what is actually a competitive advantage. Let's move on to financial projections. So these are great. I like the base case and the upside case. I don't think you necessarily need both of those in a pitch deck, but once you're talking to investors, it's great to have these different scenarios. I do like the annual summaries here, but I'd also like to see the first year broken out into monthly. And then I would note on this that all numbers are in thousands because it took me a minute to figure it out, including the number of downloads are in thousands, and I think that's important. And so trying to get, and then I usually sanity check stuff when I'm looking at it. So if you're telling me there's 1.6 million downloads per year, that's actually a lot of downloads, and maybe you have to pay $2 to $3 per download. And so $2 per download times 1.6 million downloads is $3,200,000 just in cost per install. And you're telling me your operating costs are $3.766 million. So I'm skeptical about how much money you're going to have to spend to get those downloads. Plus, retention sucks for apps. So on this chart, you can see even Snapchat, which is hugely popular, only gets 22% of its customers to return after 21 days. And so there's another app called Blipar, and they get 0.5%. So you'll probably be somewhere in the middle. So you can actually see the top leaders are averaging about 6%. So you really have to model that into your projections as well. The fact that most of the people you pay to install your app aren't coming back and aren't useful to you. And so here's an example of financial projections. And again, I'm jumping around between topics a little bit. I think there are lots of great places to innovate when you're a startup, but presenting your financial projections is not a good place to innovate. So I would show the standard spreadsheet view. I would show revenue and the sources of revenue. I would show your cost of sales. I would show your expenses. And I would show your EBITDA. I would not present it like this. The other thing that's happening is the blue line that you see running through the chart is actually the expenses. And what I'm seeing here is the revenue, which are the bars, is usually either equal to or greater than the expenses. So I don't understand why this company needs to raise money if it's always cash flow positive. I'd rather see that there's a gap and that investment is needed to cover the expenses. Jumping on to market size, this is from a slide for a dating app, and it tells me some really interesting things, which is great as an investor. So the dating app is the third largest attractor of internet users. It's in its growth life cycle stage. It's doing about $3 billion in revenue. About half of US adults are not married, which is a giant population. And the existing dating apps have only penetrated about 15% of the population. And that's growing. It's almost doubled since 2010, and people are staying single longer. So now, okay, I know there's a lot of dating apps, but you're telling me there's a big and growing market, so I'm interested in listening to your pitch. I want to see that you're positioning your company to catch a wave, and this does, it looks like there's at least something worth looking at here. Here on this market size slide, it does tell me the market size and the number of practitioners, but it doesn't tell me the growth rate. And again, I want to see that you're catching a wave, and I want to see that that wave is growing. So this market could be shrinking, this market could be growing, I don't know. You need to tell me more information to capture my attention here. Here's an example the kind of thing that I see a lot, where there is a marketing plan of sorts, but there's no data, and there's no identification of what works, what doesn't work, what has worked, what might work. So essentially what this slide does is say, hey investor, we're going to take your money and try a bunch of different stuff, and we don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And that's not the most effective way to present to investors. What is effective is going to investors and saying, hey, we've done some experimentation. So there's something called cost to acquire a customer, or CAC. And so here I can see they've tried a bunch of different things and gone from $500 per customer down to $22 per customer. So there's two smiley faces there. I know that they're not going to focus on cell phone dealers, and they are going to focus on social networks and members getting members. So that's great. That's good data to bring into the pitch deck. And then unit economics are also great. So this allows me to compare the lifetime value of the customer, or LTV, to the cost to acquire a customer, or CAC, and I can see that there's a huge gap. And that's the place where the company can become profitable. So I want to see that you know those numbers. I want to see that you know your revenue sources. I want to see that you know your cost to acquire a customer. And then I want to see that there's a big difference between the cost of acquisition and the lifetime value, because again, that's where the company's going to make money. And all of this shows me that you've done your homework and you're going to use my money responsibly as an investor. Another great thing here is the unit economics. So this is essentially a marketing funnel. And what this shows me is how many ads I run, how many downloads you get, how many signups you get, how many activations you get, and how many of those users return, and how much revenue that turns into. I've X'd out the revenue number. But this, again, allows me to understand your business model and understand that you've done the work and the testing, and you have some real sense of how much money you can make by taking in this investment. So that's just a run through of stuff I'm looking at this morning. Hopefully that will help you with your pitch decks. Last year I did another post on pitch decks, so visit part 1 of this tutorial. I'll put a link right up here, and let me know how it goes. I would love to learn more about how your pitch decks, and I'm happy to help. Hit me up. Thanks.